Welcome to the Stop Over Drinking and Start Living podcast, where high-achieving, goal-oriented rebel women come to learn how to live a vibrant and fulfilling life without requiring alcohol to get through it. No labels, no judgments, no saying you'll never drink again. Just real proven methods to help you stop rebelling against yourself with alcohol so you can drink less and do more. I'm your host, Angela Mascenik. Let's dig in. Welcome to episode 211, an interview with client Laura Young. Hello, hello, hello. How are you all? Happy mid-January. How are y'all doing with all the things you want to do this year in 2023? Are we staying strong? Are we waning? What's going on? I am here for you. So I want you to feel inspired that you can keep going and keep doing what you want to do. Keep focused on your goals. Believe in yourself by listening to this podcast episode where I had client Laura Young come on and share her story. Laura has a beautiful story, a gut-wrenching story where she lost her son 6 years ago now, I believe, and she found me and my free wine-free work week challenge and joined that challenge and decided to change her relationship with alcohol and stop numbing so she could start living again. And she found herself in unhealthy patterns with dealing with the loss of her son. And she recognized that she was ready to live. And so she said yes to herself in doing this work. And it's a beautiful interview. Laura is such an example of what is possible when you decide that you're ready to start doing things differently and the work that's involved in doing that. So enjoy this episode, friends. We are having a couple more Dry January events that you'll want to check out. We will link those up in the show notes. One being this week called Beyond Dry January, and then one on the last week of January called Dry January Evaluation, where I'm going to help you evaluate what happened this month, what went well for you, maybe what didn't go well, and how you want to move forward and have a plan with what you want to do that now that Dry January is over for you. So don't miss those free classes. Also, don't forget to sign up for what's next. I'm going to be sharing my new offerings here in the next few weeks, and I don't want you to miss out, but you have to be on that list to be the first to know. So make sure you click through and get on the list to receive an email to hear about what's happening next. Even if you're already on my email list, you got to be on this specific list to find out what's happening because there's limited quantity. It's going to be super exciting, super fun, and I don't want you to miss out on that, and it will probably sell out. So make sure you go over there and you click and you enter your email to be on the list to find out what's happening next. All right, my friends, enjoy the episode. Welcome to the podcast, Laura. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Well, y'all gave you a little introduction before Laura came on, but I want Laura to kind of share where she was when she joined the program and sort of what was going on with her in her life at the time where she started working with me. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Laura. And of course, we're going to link up how to connect with Laura online and all the things in the show notes. So take it away, Laura.
Well, I found Angela in November of 2016 or 2020. My son had passed away November the 27th of 2016. And I was a mess prior to finding Angela. I was able to go to work and function at work, but on my way home every day, I would stop and buy a bottle of wine. And I would come home and drink it as fast as I could so I could forget. And I did that for 4 years. And as I was scrolling on Facebook one day, I saw an advertisement for the wine-free work week, and I signed up for it. And I went the first night, which was the day after my son's, what I always call his angelversary. And I remember typing in the comments, I don't think I can do this. My son's birthday is coming up and on the 1st of December, and I don't think I can do it without wine. And Angela said, you're in the right place at the right time. And December 1st of 2020 was the first year I spent sober on Michael's birthday since he died.
Aww.
I did some special things in his honor. I went out to breakfast and I paid for breakfast for a random stranger. I went to a local bakery and bought a cake for a kid. And I paid for it anonymously with a gift card. And it turns out he was home with COVID, and his grandparents did a porch picked up the cake and did a porch drop off for him.
Mhm.
It was a little boy, and then I ended up sending him Legos for Christmas because every little boy likes Legos.
Aw.
And I went to the grocery store and just stuck money at random places in between rice and noodles and things that people that don't have a lot of money would hopefully find.
Wow.
And it was the first year that I spent sober in 4 years on his birthday.
Wow. Wow.
So Angela then gave the invitation to join her program, and I filled out the application and I had a consult with her, and it was a Friday. And I said, "When do we start?" And she said, "Right now." And I said, "Let me think about this over the weekend," which in my mind, I was thinking, okay, let me drink about this over the weekend.
Right.
And within half an hour, I texted her back and said, "Sign me up."
Yeah.
So I joined her program to stop learning to stop over drink, but it has changed my life in so many more ways than just stopping drinking.
I love that story, Laura. Thank you so much. And I remember that. And I just like I felt you so hard when you wrote that in the Facebook chat. And I didn't know like what happened, like then, or if you ended up drinking or what you did. But later, I think you shared, like obviously you joined the program, but later you shared that that cake that you bought. Like, didn't that end up on like USA Today or something? Like, what
It
didn't
did.
that become like a
It
news
did.
headline?
It was on a Facebook, Southern York County where I live, Facebook group page, and about 20 people automatically recognized me that I work with.
So what happened? So the mom posted, "Hey, does somebody know this person who bought this cake for my son?" Like, how did that happen?
Well, no, she posted thank you to Mike's mom because that's how I signed the card.
Ah,
Mike's mom. And she said, she put a little thank you on Facebook, and people said, "I know who it is. I know who it is. Do you want to know?" And she actually said, "No, I'd prefer to just think of her as Mike's mom until she tells me who she is."
wow. So then
So,
what happened?
well, then somebody that I know that knew her sent me the link to the USA Today page. And it still just had me listed as Mike's mom because at that point I hadn't. And then I finally texted her and told her who I was.
Wow. So how did it get to USA Today that happened?
It was in our local York Daily Record. And then
So
that was
like
it.
somebody picked up the story that this local boy who had COVID, some stranger bought him a cake on his birthday and signed it Mike's mom.
Right.
And so it was just kind of like a feel good community piece.
Right. That's what it started out in our local paper, which I
Yeah.
guess somebody in USA Today follows all those, ends up in the good news part of the paper.
Yes. Isn't that beautiful?
It was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've continued to do that. It's never gone back on, but I do continue to buy a cake every year for a random stranger. I buy
Wow.
a gift card, I stick it inside a birthday card, and then I always just sign up for Mike's mom.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so awesome. I think like giving back when you're feeling bad is really helpful, right? Like I know like if I'm having a bad day or something, which compares not to losing a child, obviously, but whenever I am feeling off or sad and I help people, I feel better about that, right? Like I feel better about myself, the world, like I'm doing something with it. And so you've made that a tradition now for that
Yes.
time.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
and I take his birthday off from work and I do just random things, and then his little brother and I usually go out for dinner, for his
Mhm.
birthday, and we usually end up at Mission Barbecue for ribs because it was Michael's favorite place, and
Aw.
he loved barbecued ribs. This year he would have turned 30, and on the Saturday after his birthday, we had a Michael should be turning 30 party, and
Aw.
my family all met at my cousin's house, who's halfway between all of us, and I ordered lobster from Maine, and we had lobster rolls and clam chowder and shrimp, and we had a Michael should be turning 30 party.
That's
And
amazing.
it was amazing, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it was surrounded me with all my family and the people that I love most in the world to help me
I
survive
think,
it.
yeah. And I also think like compare that where you were on that party to where you were 4 years ago. Like that wouldn't have even been possible for you, right?
No, It would
No.
not have been possible.
Yeah. So like, what were you doing at that time around holidays and birthdays and family get-togethers? Like, how would you deal with it?
I would drink
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to numb out and forget.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes I would go to the family's house on holidays. Sometimes I stayed home,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the time it was home with a bottle of wine.
Yeah. So you like wouldn't even like most of the time go out or like even
Mm-mm.
engage in it much.
Nope, I
Yeah.
didn't. Holidays were spent a lot of times scrolling on Facebook and crying because I was looking at everybody else's wonderful, what you think is their wonderful holiday and their wonderful family. And, and I would sit and cry and I would scroll on Facebook and I would get very angry and I would get very jealous. And
Mhm.
what I didn't realize at the time, well, I did realize it, but it didn't really click in my head that I'm only seeing what somebody wants me to see. I'm not
Mhm.
seeing what's behind the scenes. I'm not seeing that they had a humongous fight about what I didn't see any of that. I just saw what people wanted me to see.
Mhm.
And there came a point where I decided I was tired of sitting around watching other people live and I wanted to figure out how to live.
Mhm.
And after joining your program, I made 2021 be the year I wanted to live again.
Mhm.
And it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of failures. It was a lot of doing the work. Spent a lot of time in self-reflection and self-coaching.
Yeah.
But I
A
at
lot
that
of
point in
time,
time,
a lot of time learning about your feelings, right? And not being scared of the feelings that you were having
right. And
or having
realizing
an
that
agenda,
yeah,
like having that agenda, like I should be on, like this is a milestone or it's been so long, like I shouldn't still be this upset about it or whatever, right? Like we
right.
coached a lot about that.
We did. Hmm.
Yeah. And allowing those feelings, no matter where you are in the process, like your feelings are always valid and should always be listened to and felt and processed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, 2 years later, and I'm still in the program.
Well, not only are you still in the program, but we'll get to like what's happening with Laura now, but you became a mentor in the program because you had such dramatic changes in such a short amount of time. Like you really went in to the work. Like what do you think was your mindset about doing the work? So like the work, just if you don't know the details of my program, it's a lot of writing. There's workbooks every month and videos and a high frequency, a lot of coaching calls. So that takes a time commitment and a dedication, right, to do that kind of work. And you did it though. Like you went in, you started making drink plans, you started doing the work. Like what do you think about you, or what was your mindset or thoughts around doing this and figuring this out?
I actually pulled out my first journal, the one that you sent me,
Okay.
when I was thinking about this, and I pulled out my first journal to see because I wasn't a journaler. I was off and on a journal,
Mhm.
whatever it is. Before that,
Journaler.
um, I was off and on, and I had probably 15 journals that had about 10 pages written in. And you sent me after that uh, wine-free work week a journal and a special little pen, and I still use that special pen every time I journal. And I went back and I looked, and a lot of the stuff that I would put in there was my goal, was I'm not going to overdrink. And I would put as my thoughts, I don't need alcohol to have fun. I don't need alcohol to go to sleep. I don't need alcohol. I don't drink alcohol in response to my feelings.
Mm,
They were my top, and I would write them every single day in my journal.
mm,
And I learned quickly that even if I had a failure, if I went off drink plan and I drank, more than I should, to do the evaluation that you do. What well, what did I do right? What I don't remember what they all are.
it's what worked,
What
what
worked, what
didn't
didn't
work,
work, and what to do
and
different.
what would I do differently next time? So you did that. I mean, really, like we should talk about that because that growth that we have in the failure is the most important thing that you can do, right? So like it's not about being perfect. And I really want you to hear this about Laura because she for sure was not perfect. She was definitely like a great student, did the work and stuff like that, but there was no perfection in this. And
And there
so
still is.
yeah, and there's still like we're still always, me too, like we're working on things, like we're getting deeper about stuff, we're seeing more patterns. But when you have a failure or you don't follow your plan perfectly, most people just want to give up. They're like, it's not working. I'll start again some other time, or they'll push off doing that, right? They'll avoid it, whatever, or they'll be really hard on themselves. But the people that are the most successful, like Laura, take the time to go figure out what happened. Like, why did I drink off my plan? Like, what was going on for me that day? So you got to learn about yourself and your patterns with curiosity so that you could fix it going forward. If we're not willing to see it, it's really hard to change. So you did that so beautifully inside the program. You got regular coaching on it too.
Well, the other thing that I did was early on, I decided they weren't failures because I'm not a failure and I don't think of myself as a failure. I
Mm.
started calling them opportunities to learn.
I love it.
And I would call them opportunities to learn because, I didn't like thinking of myself. I got to the point where I don't beat myself up anymore.
Yeah.
When something happens, I go off plan, I do something that, I overeat, I might have an
Mhm.
extra glass of wine if I go out to dinner. I don't beat myself up anymore.
Yeah.
It happened, it's done. How can I learn from this and how do I move on?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where you have the most growth, right? Like there's just awareness and then, okay, I'm moving on. I'm going to do this differently next time. I see that pattern a little bit more clearly now. Next time I can try this little tip or strategy or something to see if that works. And then you go try it. And then sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And there's just more learning happening.
Well, and I've always been an early riser. And in the
Mhm.
past, what I would do is get up early in the morning and I would putz around the house and I would turn on TV Land and watch some stupid show. But what I switched to doing was I still get up early because that's just me. But
Mhm.
I sit with my cup of tea, with my blanket wrapped around me, and I do my journaling and
Mhm.
I do my plan for the day. And it just helps ground me and keep me, and I write my goals out and it just helps keep me grounded and it helps keep me intentional about my day,
Yeah.
what I'm
Yeah.
going to do.
Yeah.
And there's very few days I don't get up early, and there's very few days I don't um, skip journaling. Now I
Yeah.
have on occasion,
Right.
but I like to find my little spot
Mhm.
and sit and write. And that's just my time for me. When nobody else is awake, the house is quiet.
Mhm.
I usually have a cat in my lap,
Mhm.
and that's when I just sit and write.
Yeah. Tell me how you, or tell them how you would handle upcoming social events or holidays. Like, what was your process in working through that as you were in the program and learning about your feelings and being intentional and all of that? Like, what was your process for navigating some of those more difficult situations?
So I would write my goal out. And my goal is if I was going and it was a holiday and I knew we were going to be, somebody would have drinks, I would put my plan down and I set it ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do visualization and I would just sit and picture myself at the pool party, at my cousin's house, wherever, and picture myself just at the beach, sitting with my cup of tea versus a glass of wine. And I did a lot of visualization of um, what I wanted it to look like.
Mm. Yeah,
And
that
that works, because I've already been, so once I got there, and the first one I went on was a beach trip with my sisters. That was the first big thing I went on, and
yeah.
we got coaching on it because I was scared to death.
Yeah.
And I pictured it in my head exactly how I wanted it to go, and it went exactly how I wanted it to go because by the time I got there, I'd already done it 10 times in my head.
Yeah. So tell them, like, back it up a minute, and like, so normally like, say you're working on your relationship with alcohol and you've got this social event coming up and it's normally a drink fest for yourself. Normally people freak out about that, right? It's just kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. This is the first time I'm going to be around people who drink or whatever, and like we freak out about it, right?
Right.
Like that's just normal that happens, right? Because it's an unknown thing. We haven't really experienced it that way before. And so you recognize that you were a little concerned about, and you got coaching on it. So what were you thinking before that though? Like, what were you worried that that you would be pressured, you wouldn't be fun? Like, what was going through your mind?
Well, some of it was I was worried that that it wouldn't be any fun. I was
Mhm.
worried that everybody would be like, "Well, aren't you going to have wine? Aren't you going to have wine? Aren't you going to?" And um, I worried about that in social situations. Am I going to be fun? Is anybody going to want to talk to me? And what I found through doing it all, and I get better and better at it, is that Nobody cares. Nobody cares if it's a glass of Diet Coke in my hand or a glass of wine.
Yeah.
And this past Saturday, I was actually at a game night that a friend of mine had, and there was punch there. And I poured the punch in my cup and I took a sip and I went, Nancy, what's in this? And she said, that's sangria. And Nancy doesn't drink. So I was not expecting it to be alcoholic.
Yeah.
So I just sort of sat with it in my hand for a little while and then walked over to the sink and dumped it out and poured myself a Diet Coke, and nobody cared because I had made that commitment to do dry January.
Mm.
And my word for the year is committed. So I like took one sip and I'm like, because she doesn't, it was one of my friends who doesn't drink. I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah.
But people that she invited do.
Yes. Yes.
So nobody cared. I mean, we had a game night, we played games, and we had a lot of fun. And some people were drinking and some of us weren't.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
Yeah. I definitely think, just kind of going back to like the whole beach thing, we make way more drama about this stuff in our heads. And if you don't learn how to manage that, that will become your reality, right? So a lot of people will talk themselves out of not being alcohol free or using a drink plan or cutting back in those situations. And they just say, screw it, right? Because they're so sick of that negative story that they're telling themselves about how awful it'll be and it won't be fun. Yeah. So that was a tool that you used and you learned about, right? Visualizing success. If you're going to spend so much time in your head thinking about it happening, you might as well think about it happening in a good way instead of in that negative way.
And I also told my family ahead of time.
Yes.
And I didn't do it. I did it in a text.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, because I hadn't told anybody I was doing this program yet. Like my family didn't know I was. And I sent a text out. This is what I'm doing. And just for the record, I don't care if you guys drink. You can drink if you want to. I will not be drinking on the trip. And we went to a really nice restaurant that had barrel, like wine on tap in oak barrels. And my sisters all had wine and I drank an iced tea. And they were perfectly fine with it. Because they said, if you don't want us to drink, we won't. And I'm like, I don't care if you drink. I mean, this is your vacation too. And if you want to, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not going to.
Yes. I love the communication ahead of time to the people. I think it helps you just kind of it helps recommit your commitment to yourself and you're verbalizing that out loud in a text or however. And then it just kind of lets the other people have that moment of like, oh, like if they feel unexpected about that, to kind of deal with that on their own when you're not face to face. Right. And if you're already nervous about it, showing up and saying that in person, it can amplify your nerves a little bit. It can be awkward in that, well, I don't know how they're going to react. And like, you don't have to deal with any of that. If you can just let people know ahead of time and give yourself a little bit of space around it, is a really good tool that we can all probably utilize. Just, if people have questions about it, they can ask you about it beforehand, before you're in the moment of this. Maybe some people have social anxiety or awkwardness or whatever, difficult family situations. I think setting that intention ahead of time and letting people know that you trust is a really good idea. It's also not required. Like you could have went and not said anything and just said, no, I don't want to drink. But for you, that worked really well.
It did work well for me. And it was.
Do you feel like you need to do that still? Give people a heads up? Like you're just like, it doesn't matter to you anymore.
It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter. And I can say, I don't have that same anxiety in social situations because what I found out over the last 2 years is nobody cares if I'm drinking or not.
Yeah.
Somebody might say, hey, do you want a glass of wine? I'll be like, no, thank you. I'm good. And I found out really, truly that people they really don't care.
Yeah.
Or at least my friends don't. If it's somebody that's like trying to push alcohol on me, that, then they're not really my friend anyway.
Yeah. And yeah, we might get some of those, right? Now I think it's great to just make a comment on that. Sometimes people will say something and it's not nice, like they'll make a comment or they'll try to push on you, ask you like, well, why can't you just have one? That kind of stuff. And it's just like, that's more about them and it's almost like you're threatening their relationship with alcohol.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you guys notice that or have that, we're sorry and you should get better friends. No, I'm just kidding. But it might just be worth a conversation later. Be like, hey, this is not about you not drinking less. It's about me. And this is what I'm choosing for me. And it feels good for me to do that. And so that's what I'm going to be doing right now. It's like, we're not trying to take anything away from anybody. We're just trying to focus on our own health and our own goals, right?
Right.
Yeah. Nothing to be ashamed of either, to not drink.
Right. And it's not.
Yeah.
And the social situations I've been in when people have been like, hey, don't you want, is usually work related with the group of, and there might be a vendor that's like paying and it's an open bar and people just are like, hey, have a drink, it's free. It's free alcohol. And I had even been at my boss's wedding, and I'd been in the program about a year at that point in time. And we were at her wedding and I drank a half a glass of wine to toast. And I put it down because it was Chardonnay and I don't like Chardonnay. And I never would have thought I could go to a wedding and have half a glass of wine. But as I was drinking it, I'm like, this isn't even worth drinking. It's not the kind I like. And it was the only white wine option I had. So
yeah, it's amazing.
And I never would have thought I could go to a wedding and drink half a glass of wine.
Yeah. I know we make it sound like you sound so casual about it. Like it's not a big deal, but like, I think to remember what Laura said in the beginning, like you were drinking a bottle a night, right? Before, like when you joined the program, that at least, right? And then probably more on the weekends or on vacations or whatever, right? So for you to come now, like a year into the program, be like, yeah, I just had this, like it was just not a big deal. Like there was a lot that had to happen for you to get there. There was, right. And you're you're past it now though. So I think that's what I think the message here is, like, it is absolutely possible. If Laura can do this stuff through terrible, painful, emotional things and events in your life, most people can, right? Like if you're willing to connect with yourself and feel your feelings and, plan and be intentional around things, it absolutely is possible. So what do you think, like the biggest thing for you, like in the beginning around the emotions, like what do you think the biggest hurdle you had to overcome or thing that kind of clicked for you that helped you the most?
Well, I don't know that I ever had heard the whole idea of processing emotions before. And when you explained how the emotions and our feelings are that vibration in our body, and I got in tune to feeling them. And I remember you saying life is 50-50. You're going to have half of these negative emotions and half positive emotions. And it's okay to not be okay. And I just remember thinking, well, on those days that I'm sad, it's okay that I'm just sad.
Yeah.
I don't have to numb it with alcohol. I don't have to overeat to just stuff down those feelings. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to be sad. And that was one of the biggest revelations in the beginning for me, was just going through that every day. What am I feeling? Setting my alarm to like chime every couple of hours so I could sit and take even 15 minutes, check in with myself. How am I feeling? What am I feeling? What does it feel like? And I got pretty good at learning how to process those emotions and knowing that everything that I felt and all those emotions are okay to have.
Yeah. And not thinking that they shouldn't be there, or you should be past things by now, or you wish you didn't feel this way, right? Like we had to work on that, of course. Like it wasn't as easy as, I'm just going to be okay with my feelings. Right. It's like that, especially sometimes we're not even aware that we're rejecting how we're feeling, or we're thinking we wish we didn't feel this way, or we are trying to push it along a lot faster than it needs to be. But you were patient, right? And you just like were willing to kind of go with the flow and plan and check in and really understand yourself and like what you were experiencing emotionally.
Well, and what I did in the beginning too, when I first signed up, was you sent the workbooks, and I sent them all to Staples, and I had them all bound, and I had all 6 months done at one time. Because I remember you saying that you were going to tweak the program a little bit in 2021, and I texted you and said, "Can I print out all these workbooks, or should I wait?" Go ahead, and doing the work. I remember looking at that going, oh my gosh, how long is this going to take me every day? And I don't have time for this. But I made the time for it, and I did the workbooks, and I was intentional about doing them, learning how to process the feelings. I still have your guided processing on my phone. I have it downloaded on my phone that if I have a feeling and I can't figure out what I'm feeling, that I just listen to it.
Yeah. The guided audio of me. It's like a meditation processing of the feelings. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one.
I still have it on my phone and I still use it.
Yeah, like you're still using the tools, right? So, you figured that out. You got good at managing your emotions and processing your feelings and interrupting that automatic cycle of when you felt bad, you would drink, right?
Right.
So you just got really good at feeling those negative emotions over time, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, what happens 6 months in? Like, how much were you drinking less?
Um, I don't drink through the week at all anymore. And I made a conscious decision one, and I took all the alcohol out of my house. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm only going to drink if we go out to a restaurant. And I would have like 2 glasses of wine and that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
And I made that conscious decision one month, and I don't remember which month it was, but I'm like, I'm going to buy a bottle of wine and I'm going to put it in my refrigerator
Mm-hmm.
because the real test comes when it's there and available and I can open it up and pour it.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have wine in the house, I have to leave. I
Mm-hmm.
have to go to the grocery store. I have to go to a convenience store that sells wine. I have to go to the liquor store. I have to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I work from home and it's, something's like us, it's not worth it. And I would stay home. So I went on purpose and that bottle of wine stayed in my refrigerator for about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And a friend came to visit and I said, okay, 2 glasses of wine apiece. That's all we're having.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that bottle of wine, like probably, but it sat in my refrigerator for a good 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was tempting. There were days where I'd open the refrigerator, and I'd stare at it, and I'd stand there, and I would take a deep breath, and I would just let it pass, and then I'd shut the refrigerator door and get a glass of water.
Yeah. Yes.
It was there because I wanted to have that in my house.
Yeah. Well, you wanted to feel empowered around it, right? Like you wanted to feel in control. Like didn't matter. We talk about this a lot. And I think at the beginning, you should set yourself up for success in any way that looks like. So if you want, like you did, you removed all the alcohol from your house to make it easier for you to follow your plans, right? Like that is an empowering way to think about it. Not that I can't be around it because I have no control. That's not a very empowering way to think about it, right? But you're like, I'm choosing not to have it in my house because I want to be successful. It's a great way to think about it. And then you made progress. And then you're like, oh, I want to feel free, right? I don't want to be controlled if it's in the house, out of the house, all that. And so you did that intentionally. And I remember you doing that.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it worked.
And my favorite bottle of wine, St. Michelle Riesling, my favorite bottle, sat in the refrigerator for 6 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would open the refrigerator and I was still had a drink plan during that time period.
Mm-hmm.
But my drink plan would be, okay, we're going out to dinner and I'll have 2 glasses of wine while I'm out to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like that 6 weeks I went totally without alcohol,
Right.
but
It's more the at-home type
with the
triggery
at
type.
home,
Yeah.
this triggers that would have triggered me to, oh, it's been a stressful day. I need the bottle of wine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for me, that gave me the uh, knowledge that I can do it.
Yeah.
I don't have to avoid the restaurant that has a bar. I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
avoid going to my cousin's house who has alcohol. I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
avoid any of those situations because I know I can be around it and be okay with it.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what
And I
did
wouldn't
you
from
do?
there.
Like when you did get triggered or you felt like, like obviously like your brain suggested that you drink sometimes, right? Like what were some of the tools that you found really helpful or what did you do during those times when you really wanted it?
Well, and that was one of the things that you taught us early on in the very beginning is that, you have that deep breath and let that urge pass.
Mm-hmm.
And you do, and I would take those deep breaths and I'd just be like, okay, I know you want the glass of wine, brain, but shut up. We're not doing that now. And I would talk to myself, you promised yourself, if I want wine, I can have it tomorrow, but I'm not changing my drink plan today.
Mm-hmm.
And I would talk to myself and tell myself, okay, brain, I know you want it, but
Mm-hmm.
we're not having it today.
Mm-hmm. So
And
just
it was,
acknowledging that you wanted it and reaffirming your commitment and just doing some deep breaths.
yep.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And if you do the work and if you put the time and the effort into it, it works.
Yeah, it's amazing. So then what happened? So you went through the program, you became a mentor, so you helped other people inside the program, which was amazing. You didn't you do some races and some
I
physical
did.
activity too that year?
I did. My sister is on race number 32 of 50. She's doing a half marathon in every state. And she was coming to Pennsylvania to do one in Gettysburg. And our family decided to make it a family half marathon. So, and and I walked it. I didn't run. I'm not a runner, but I walked it. And that was the first one I did. And then so I've done a couple of those with her.
Mm-hmm.
The last time she did a half marathon, I did a 10K. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
do the full one, but we still meet when she's in a state that's close enough to us. We'll meet, go for the weekend, and do the races together.
So fun. So more physical activity, feeling better, feeling like you're living again, right? That was your whole goal when you started. It's like,
That was my goal.
I want to work on this. I like when you were at that point, and I think we'll talk about this in a minute, but so Laura coaches now. She's became a certified life coach, like after going through this program. So now she is building her practice on coaching bereaved mothers to start living again. And so describe what that looked like for you. Like, how did you know you were ready to kind of work on stuff? And I mean, the alcohol thing obviously needed to be addressed before you could start living again, because that was holding you back, right? And you recognize that the alcohol was definitely holding you back from doing some of the things that maybe you were just beginning at that point to kind of want to start doing again, I'm guessing. So kind of tell me like where your mind was at that time about the process or the timing around Michael's death, and then you dealt with it the best that you could deal with it for a certain amount of time. But were you feeling something like, I'm ready, I'm wondering, what can I do, how can I support myself? Like, what was happening?
Well, like I said earlier, I was tired of watching other people live. And I'm
Right.
like, this is no way to live. I have 30 or 40 more years on this earth,
Mm.
essentially, if I'm
Mhm.
lucky. And I don't want to spend them miserable and unhappy. Yes,
Mm.
I'm always going to miss my son. Yes, I'm always going to love my son. But I still have people around me. I still have my other son. I still have family. I still have friends. And I wanted to choose to live again, to be alive. And I couldn't imagine having another 30 years of sitting in front of the TV on Thanksgiving Day, drinking myself numb
Mm.
and not having the time with my family and the people that I love.
Yeah.
So it was at that conscious choice, not that just like you don't put your kid in the past, you don't forget your kid.
Right.
You just um, learn to live with both the grief and the love in your body. And
Yeah.
that's the way I describe it, is learning to live with both grief and love. I'm
Yeah.
always going to miss them. I'm always going to love them. And I'm always going to talk about them. When
Yeah.
people talk about their kids, I talk about Michael.
Yeah.
And I love hearing stories. And I love, when his friends will call me up and say, well, Michael told me never to tell you this, but,
Yeah.
and I love hearing his stories and I love talking about him.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I
So I
still
think
do.
that's just really like, so basically, I talk a lot on the podcast and in my programs and all the things. It's like listening to yourself. That you heard that within yourself probably for a while, I'm guessing, before you took some action, right? So like, but I think maybe you just weren't super conscious of it, or maybe there wasn't an offer for you to like kind of do it, right? That I was presenting to you in that moment. But like you listened to what you wanted to do. And oftentimes we don't do that or don't know how to do that. But I think that's something to just note. Like Laura in her internal mind said, this isn't how I want to live my life, but she actually did something about it. And so if you guys have those ideas, those thoughts, knowing things that could be different, it's just take the first step, take the first action into listening to yourself and what it is that you want to do with your life, and figure it out. Because look at where you are now. Like, had you not listened to that and you would ignored that, what do you think it would look like now? Probably much of the same, right? If not
Much of the
worse.
same. Hmm.
Yeah.
And I was on a whole lot of, after Michael died, I jumped into a whole lot of Facebook groups for um, moms that lost children.
Mm-hmm.
And I would read over and over and over again stories of moms who said, my daughter died 20 years ago. I'm not myself. I can't get out of bed in the morning. My hair's all falling out. My teeth are all falling out. My fingernails are all brittle. And I just want to go be with my daughter. And I'm thinking,
Oh my
I
gosh.
removed myself from a lot of those groups because there was no hope there. And I
Mm,
wanted hope that life could get good again.
mm,
And that's why I decided I wanted to be a life coach, because I'm looking at some of these moms that don't know how. They don't have the tools. They don't, not that you move on, not that you forget, because you never move on. You just learn how
mhm.
to live with
Yeah,
it. And that's when I decided I wanted to help other bereaved moms. I wanted to give them some hope, and I wanted to give them an idea that life can be better.
yeah. You're such a good example of it, really. You really are. And you're working, so Laura also works full time as a nurse. She's starting her own, so she's worked full time through all of this, did the work in the program, right? During COVID, all of
Mhm.
it. And so the people that say, I don't have time, Laura is like, I will show you. You, like you work full time, you did the work in the program, you supported being a mentor inside the program, then you went through life coach certification, and now you're starting your own practice and building like all of your own online systems and stuff like that. So like, listen, if Laura can do it, you guys can. And she has a family and friends and travels and does all the things. So I think the time thing is important just to know that if you want it, you can make time for it. Yeah.
You
But it's
can.
taking up your time, right? Like that, think about how much time the drinking was taking up for you.
Oh, a lot. Yeah.
It was occupying all of your free time, sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would start drinking wine while I was cooking dinner. Then I would drink wine as I watched TV, and then I would fall asleep.
Yeah.
It was, and I wasn't living. Like I said, I just truly wasn't living. I was existing, and I just got to the point where I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. I'm so glad you listened to yourself.
And I didn't know how to, I would tell myself every Monday, I'm not going to drink this week. I'm not going to drink this week. We get to Wednesday and it would be like, oh, fuck it. I'm going to have wine.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell myself over and over, but I didn't know how to help myself. I needed somebody to guide me through it. And that's where you came in at the perfect time and the perfect place in my life that, I was like, well, how's she going to help me? She's never lost a child. But at that point, I wasn't really looking for that type of support. I was looking for how do I quit drinking?
Yeah.
And everything you said made sense.
Yeah. And I'm fun, right?
Yeah. And I laugh and we could during coaching sessions. And I just remember the first time I laughed after my son died, feeling that I can't laugh. Like my kid's dead. And I thought I would never laugh again.
Mm.
And, but Michael was the kind of kid that made everybody laugh. And he wouldn't have wanted me to continue that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really, really important. No matter what kind of coaching or support you might need, if you've been trying to do something on your own and you keep hitting a stumbling block, there's absolutely no shame in getting help for that, right? Like
Absolutely.
I know how to help people stop over drinking. That's my specialty, right? I've done it myself. I've developed multiple programs for that. And if and for you, like you can help grieving moms come out of it. They don't know, like they don't have the structure or the training and all the things that you've done, right? And
Right.
sometimes it just helps to have a guideline or a process or a container. So you can figure that out and have the support along the way. And you'll just get to your results faster that you want when you get support. And it's more enjoyable when you know you're not alone. Right. And
Right.
you can have somebody you can talk about the hard stuff with without judgment, without making it mean anything about yourself. So the support piece, I think, is really, really critical. You don't need to do any of this stuff alone. And you don't have to invest a lot of money into it either. I mean, Laura did invest in my higher end coaching program. But a lot of people get help by listening to this podcast, so it doesn't have to be a big investment either, but getting support, finding that community type thing is really, really helpful.
Right. And I do think just getting to know some of the other women
Yes.
in the program, hearing their stories and being able to
Mhm.
share, this is what I found that helped me. This is what,
Mhm.
it gives you, I look back at the people that were in the program when I started that helped me and
Mhm.
gave me those things. And that's, I like still doing that is helping the newer ones come along and
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you do need community and we are meant to be social creatures. We're not meant to do anything in isolation.
Right. Yeah. And it removes a lot of the shame that you have, especially around the drinking, when you can feel free to talk about it and not be judged,
And know that it's a private group that nobody else has access to. Nobody's going to hear
Yes.
you coaching that's not in
Right.
the program.
Right.
And it was very safe. It was a
Mm-hmm.
very safe place to be.
I'm so
And
glad you're a part of it.
I'm glad I was too. And I'm glad that I found you when I found you. It was the universe just put us in the right path at the right time. And I truly believe that's how things work, the way they're.
Yeah. And when you're ready, like we talked about, right? Like you were ready at that point too. It just maybe you weren't super conscious of it at that point yet, but you were hearing yourself and you were listening to yourself. Like, this is not, I don't want to be 20 years down the line with my hair falling out. I don't want that. You knew
Right.
that, right?
And
That's
I
not,
knew that.
yeah,
And that's why I chose to figure out,
yeah,
because I would look at, I still have my others, and I didn't, and Mark actually had said to me at one point in time, Mom, I'm still here.
mm-hmm.
Because, he lost his brother too.
Yeah,
And, it was hard for him. And he'd be like, but I'm still here.
mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time to get to the point where I wasn't the mom that was hovering over him and like making sure that, he called me every other day, every
Mm-hmm.
day. He sent me a text every day. It took me a while to realize that he still gets to live his own life.
Mm-hmm.
I've made my choices. He gets to make his choices. But I was so afraid in the beginning. What if something happens to him too?
Yeah.
And that was like almost paralyzes you with fear. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to be that way anymore.
Yeah. And it's so good to know you didn't have to,
Right.
right? You don't have to stay like that if you don't want to. And you made that happen for yourself. So,
And and I believe it's a choice I made. That it was the
yeah.
choice that I made, that to figure out how to live again, because that was my choice.
Yeah. And you
And I'm
slayed it, Laura Young.
and I'm glad I did, because life is so much more fun now. If I go, instead of coming home and just drinking after work, I can go for a walk, I can go for a hike, I can train for a half marathon,
You can
I
sell
can
your tea. I mean,
I can do a whole bunch of stuff that I wasn't doing before. It's so much
yeah.
more fun.
Yeah. That's so good. All right. How do people find you? Like on the
Um,
interwebs?
my Facebook page is Life Coaching for Bereaved Moms.
Okay.
My website is coachlaurayoung.com,
Okay.
and my email address is coachlaurayoung@outlook.com.
Nice. We'll put in your links in the show notes too. But if you know of somebody who Laura might be able to help, please forward on her information to them. She's an amazing person, and she had the same training as me, with the life coaching.
And they can go on my website and sign up to get my emails.
Yes. Yes.
Because I do a weekly email, and it's right on my website. They can look back at my blogs that I've been writing, and maybe gain a little bit of insight into what it's like.
Yeah, you wrote some really good blogs about like around the holidays and birthdays and milestone type things too. That's really helpful for people. So Laura's a real deal, and if you need help, you should call her. All right, Laura, anything else you feel like they should know about life coaching, healing?
If they're on the fence about it, just do it. Because it is. If you put the time and the effort and the work into it, it's going to change your life.
Oh, so good. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. So what did you guys think of Laura? Are you inspired? If Laura can do it, so can you. I love you all. We'll talk to you soon.